Franklin James leaned back into the driver's seat of his beige rental car, eyes fixed on the storefront in front of him. Store 5, one of 9 boutique wellness centers he had painstakingly built from scratch 6 years ago. The venture had once been his pride, born from late nights, sacrificed weekends, and more than one maxed-out credit card. It grew quickly, reliably turning profit each quarter, but recently, troubling complaints had begun to trickle in, not about prices or quality, but about people. Cold staff, long wait times. One review said a customer waited an hour, only to be told they were too late. That stung. Franklin had always believed that customer service was the soul of a brand. Vague updates and polished reports from district managers didn't satisfy him anymore, so he took matters into his own hands. He shaved off his well-groomed beard, dyed his hair gray, and slipped on a pair of thick prescription glasses. No one at corporate had ever sent him to this location, and there were no photos of him in any of the 9 stores. He'd made sure of that. Disguised in khakis, a faded polo shirt, and a small duffel slung over his shoulder, he stepped through the sliding doors. Nobody looked up. The waiting room buzzed only with the faint hum of lo-fi music from the ceiling speakers. A few customers sat scattered, glued to their phones, faces indifferent. Behind the front desk sat a young woman, long lashes blinking slowly as she scrolled on her phone. Her name tag read Kelsey. Franklin approached and cleared his throat. "Hi there, I booked a consultation for 10. She didn't even glance up. "Name?" she mumbled, still chewing gum. "Frank Jennings," he said, choosing a false last name. Kelsey tapped a few keys, not breaking rhythm with her scrolling. "Take a seat. Someone'll get you." He nodded politely and took a seat by the window, watching the slow morning pass. 10 minutes went by, then 20, then 40. Nothing. No names called, no one emerged. Kelsey laughed occasionally at something on her screen. Franklin felt a growing pit in his stomach. A man sitting nearby leaned over and whispered, "Been here since 9:40. Think she forgot about us." Franklin stood, uneasy but calm, and walked back to the desk. "Excuse me, just checking in." "I said someone'll get you," Kelsey interrupted, not even lifting her gaze. Time crawled. By 12:15, Franklin had been sitting for over 2 hours. Not a single employee had come out. 2 customers gave up and walked out in silence. Kelsey didn't notice, or didn't care. Franklin's heart thudded, not with anger, but with something colder. Disbelief. When he finally stood again and spoke, his voice trembled. "I'm sorry, but it's been over 2 hours. Is anyone actually working back there?" Kelsey sighed loudly and rolled her eyes. "Sir, I told you. You don't have to keep asking. Someone will get you." Just then, a tall man with a clipboard appeared from the hallway. "Kelsey, who's next?" She gave a shrug, not even turning. "I don't know. Some guy's been bugging me all morning." Franklin froze. That was it. He walked out in stunned silence. Sitting back in his car, he stared at the steering wheel, his mind a haze. The man who had built this brand with his bare hands had just been dismissed like a nuisance. He had a choice now. Call the district manager and demand a meeting, or go back in. Not as himself, but as someone invisible. Someone who could watch from the inside. The next morning, Franklin returned with a new identity. Fred Jenkins. His hair was buzzed, a fake tattoo sleeve peeked out from under his short sleeve, and in his hand was a freshly filled out application for a front desk trainee position. The store manager, frazzled and overworked, barely glanced at him before sighing, "You start today." And just like that, he was in. What Franklin saw on the inside was worse than he'd imagined. Kelsey wasn't just inattentive, she was unmonitored. She clocked in late, left early, flirted with delivery drivers, and spent more time glued to her phone than at her post. When Franklin asked where they tracked appointments, she waved him off. "Don't worry about it. No one keeps track." The manager, Carla, was virtually non-existent. She stayed holed up in her office, emerging only to bark an order or reprimand someone without context. It was as if she'd mentally checked out months ago. But in the midst of this dysfunction, Franklin met someone who gave him hope. Shayla. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, soft voice. A part-time floater who worked at different locations to fill in staffing gaps. She never complained. When Kelsey left messes, Shayla cleaned them. When customers got frustrated, she soothed them. When Kelsey disappeared for half an hour, Shayla stepped in at the desk without a word. She didn't play hero. She simply cared. "You're new?" she asked, rolling a cart of supplies down the hall. "Yeah, just started," he said, still adjusting to the name Fred. "Shayla, good luck, this place is a thing." She smiled, half amused, half resigned. Franklin watched her more than he spoke. She was the quiet kind of employee who held the place together without anyone realizing it. Later that afternoon, while eating lunch in the break room, Franklin overheard Kelsey on the phone. "I don't know. Some old dude threw a fit yesterday because he had to wait. Like, calm down, it's not a hospital." That old dude was him? Franklin clenched his jaw so tight it ached. This wasn't just poor management. This was something worse. Something corrosive. A culture of disregard, of entitlement. And it wasn't just disrespectful to the customers. It was disrespectful to the dream he had built. And to the people like Shayla who still showed up with integrity in a place that had forgotten what that meant. Franklin had seen enough. Enough neglect. Enough dismissal. Enough disregard for the very people who kept the business alive. People like Shayla, who cared, who showed up, who didn't ask for recognition but deserved it more than anyone else in the building. Tomorrow, everything would change. At exactly 8:05 a.m., just 1 minute past the printed start time on the schedule taped to the break room door, Franklin walked through the staff entrance. The hallway was silent, lights dim, the front lobby as still as a movie set waiting for action. He passed the reception desk. Kelsey's iced coffee sat sweating on a stack of unopened mail. She was nowhere in sight. From behind him, a quiet rustle. Footsteps. Shayla, already in her scrubs, was pushing a cart stacked neatly with fresh towels. "You're early," she said with a faint smile, not slowing her pace. Franklin nodded, his voice quiet, trying to make a good impression. She gave a small, knowing nod and disappeared into the treatment rooms without another word. She didn't need to say much. Her presence spoke volumes. Franklin took a hesitant seat behind the reception desk. He wasn't even sure if he was allowed to touch the computer. No one had trained him, and the login screen stared back, cold and password protected. A few seconds later, the phone buzzed once, then stopped. He didn't answer. He wasn't ready. Not yet. At 8:22, Kelsey finally arrived. Still in sunglasses, phone pressed to her ear, she strolled in like she owned the place. "If he's still mad about yesterday, that's not my problem," she said casually, tossing her oversized tote onto the counter as she breezed past Franklin without so much as a glance. "Whatever. I'm at work. Bye." She slid into her chair, pulled the sweating coffee cup toward her, and opened Instagram. That was her priority. Franklin watched in silence. His stomach churned, not from nerves, but from something heavier, disappointment. Minutes later, an older woman entered the lobby. She walked with a limp, carefully balancing herself as she held out a printed appointment confirmation. "I have an appointment with Dr. Patel at 8:30, she said politely. Kelsey barely looked up. "Yeah, he's not here yet. You can sit." The woman hesitated. "I had to leave work early for this." "Okay," Kelsey repeated, eyes glued to her phone. Franklin's chest tightened. He stepped forward, gently. "Would you like me to check the schedule? I'm still learning, but I can give it a shot." Kelsey gave him a dismissive glance. It's at 8:30. That means it's at 8:30. The woman sat down, clearly uncomfortable. At 8:45, Dr. Patel walked in through the side door, adjusting his glasses. "Did Mrs. Hill arrive?" he asked. Kelsey didn't respond. She was chuckling at a video, earbuds now loosely hanging from her ears. "He's been here 15 minutes, Franklin offered, carefully watching the doctor's reaction. Dr. Patel blinked, surprised. "Why didn't you page me?" Kelsey looked up lazily. "You weren't here." "It was in the back office since 8:10, he said, maintaining his composure. Kelsey shrugged. "Not my fault you didn't say aye." The doctor sighed, weary, and gestured to the waiting woman. "Please send her in." She stood and followed him into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind them. Franklin turned slowly to Kelsey. "Do you always hold off on paging providers?" She blinked. "They know their schedules. I'm not their babysitter." He didn't reply, but he logged everything. Her tone, her timing, the apathy in her voice. This wasn't an isolated moment. It was a pattern. Later that morning, the manager, Carla, finally emerged from her office. She wore a tight black sweater and carried a sleek tablet. She didn't look up. "Fred," she muttered, eyes on the screen. "You're on towels today. Shayla's covering reception." Kelsey raised her voice, offended. "Wait, why?" Carla didn't respond. She vanished down the hall as quickly as she came. Seconds later, Shayla appeared, wiping her hands on a small towel. "I haven't done front desk in weeks," she said softly. Franklin offered. "I can take it if you'd prefer." She shook her head quickly. "No, I'll handle it. I'd rather not argue." And she did handle it with grace. In 10 minutes, she had checked in 2 clients, answered a billing question over the phone, and printed a missing receipt for a client whose insurance paperwork had vanished. Calm, composed, competent. She was what this place should have been built around. By noon, Carla called an all-staff meeting in the cramped back break room. There weren't enough chairs. Franklin stood in the corner, watching. "Listen up," Carla began, pacing in front of a dry erase board that hadn't been updated in months. "Corporate's been on my ass. We're behind. Upsells, reviews, appointment retention. We need to push harder. If someone's in for a facial, pitch the peel. Massage, mention deluxe. Don't let anyone leave without booking the next one. Got it?" Shalina raised her hand quietly. "The clients are complaining about wait times. Maybe if we had one more person at the front." "We don't have the budget," Carla snapped. "Do more with less. That's the job." Kelsey, barely pretending to listen, was scrolling under the table. Carla didn't notice. "And another thing," she continued. "Some of you are over-cleaning. I'm not naming names, but we don't need to waste product scrubbing things that don't need it." Shayla's eyes dropped to her lap. The meeting ended abruptly. No questions allowed. As everyone filed out, Franklin caught up to Carla. "Quick question. I'm still learning. Should I be shadowing someone specific?" "You'll figure it out," she said, tapping her tablet without looking up. "Just don't get in anyone's way." She walked off before he could say another word. By mid-afternoon, Franklin was folding towels when he heard raised voices near the front desk. A woman was clearly upset. "I've been double charged," she said, firmly. "I was only here once this week." Kelsey leaned back, unimpressed. "That's not something I can fix." "You're at the front desk. Who do I talk to?" "Told you. It's not me." Shayla stepped in from the hallway, drying her hands. "I can take a look," she said gently. Kelsey rolled her eyes and stood. "I said it's not our fault. You probably forgot you came twice." The woman's cheeks flushed. "I don't like what you're implying." Shayla calmly stepped between them. "Ma'am, I'll print your visit history. Just give me 1 minute." The woman gave a tight nod. Shayla disappeared into the back. Kelsey muttered, "Some people just love drama." Franklin stepped in, his voice even but firm. "That wasn't necessary." Kelsey shot him a look. "You don't even work here full-time. Stay out of it." Moments later, Shayla returned and handed the woman a paper. "Here go. Looks like a system error. I'll make sure it's flagged." The woman exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing. "Thank you," she said quietly. And Franklin stood there, absorbing everything, every word, every pause. Because tomorrow, the man behind the checks wouldn't just be watching. He'd be ready to speak. "Thank you. That's all I needed." The woman's voice was soft but steady as she clutched the printed receipt Shayla had handed her. As she left, her face showed a mix of relief and quiet frustration. Frustration that she'd even had to defend herself in the first place. Once the door clicked shut behind her, Kelsey rolled her eyes. Whatever. Franklin didn't respond. He didn't need to. He turned and walked straight to the break room, heart pounding. Behind the humming vending machine, he pulled out his phone and dialed the district HR lead. "She needs to be removed today," he said, voice low but firm. "There's no recovery from what I've seen. I'm not waiting until the end of the week." By 4:30 p.m., a regional HR representative quietly walked into the building. She asked Kelsey to come to the back for a routine check-in. Kelsey, unfazed and still chewing gum, followed her without question. Within 15 minutes she was gone. No yelling, no scene, just a blank expression and a tote bag slung over her shoulder as she stepped through the lobby doors for the last time. Shayla turned to Franklin, puzzled. "What happened?" He didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a broom from the supply closet and started sweeping the lobby floor. That night, Franklin stayed late. He helped Shayla close up, wiping counters and straightening chairs long after the last client left. It wasn't required, not for a new hire, and certainly not for someone who technically wasn't even on payroll. But no one questioned him. The space, with Kelsey gone, had shifted. It was quieter, less tense, less draining. Shayla managed the final appointments with effortless calm. She offered Franklin occasional pointers, but never in a condescending tone. Her feedback was gentle, grounded in experience, not ego. As they locked up, Shayla turned to him at the door. "Don't take this the wrong way, Fred, but most new people don't stay past day 3. You okay?" Franklin paused. "I'm fine. Just trying to understand how this place really works." She studied him for a moment longer than usual, then gave a quiet nod and pushed open the door. The next morning, tension returned like an unwelcome guest. Carla stormed in, visibly irritated, and called an impromptu staff huddle near the back corridor. Her voice was clipped, her expression unreadable. "Couple things," she began. "Kelsey's out, permanently. HR handled it." No explanation, no ownership, just a cold corporate shrug. "I'll be covering the front desk myself until we get someone else in the rotation," she continued. "In the meantime, I don't want anyone overstepping. We still have roles around here, and we stick to them." Her eyes flicked toward Shayla, but Shayla didn't flinch. "Also, corporate sending someone next week to review our compliance logs. I want every station spotless, no excuses." Franklin said nothing. He was still the trainee on paper. It wasn't time to speak. Not yet. But he took mental notes. Not once had Carla mentioned improving service. Not once had she asked how the team was holding up. Her focus was image, not integrity. As the day progressed, Carla reappeared in short, abrupt bursts, each time her eyes darting for flaws. Finger smudges on glass, a pen out of place, a chair not perfectly aligned. She never greeted clients, never thanked the staff. Her silence wasn't professionalism, it was detachment. Around noon, a young man walked in, clutching a folder of papers. He looked nervous, maybe 20, wearing a navy hoodie and shifting awkwardly as he scanned the room. Shayla approached with a soft smile. "Hi there, can I help you?" "I'm here for an intake. My name's Jamal. They told me to bring this paperwork." "Of course," she said. "Come sit. I'll get everything set up." She began entering his information while Franklin observed from a quiet distance. Jamal fidgeted with the zipper on his hoodie, avoiding eye contact, clearly unsure of what to expect. Then Carla appeared. "What's going on here?" she asked sharply. "New intake," Shayla said smoothly. "He brought his documents." Carla stepped closer, picking up the folder. "Did you confirm his referral?" "I'm entering it now," Shayla replied. "He needs to wait. This isn't a walk-in clinic." Shayla remained steady. "He has a scheduled intake." Carla turned to Jamal. "You didn't call ahead?" He looked down, uneasy. I did, last week." Her tone darkened. "What's the name of your referral agency?" Before he could answer, Shayla stepped forward. "I have the confirmation right here. He's on the calendar." Carla didn't respond. She turned and walked away without a word. Jamal's eyes stayed on the floor. "You're okay," Sheila said gently. "She just likes to check everything." Franklin's stomach twisted. What he had witnessed wasn't a policy issue. It was a power play. Carla's tone hadn't just been sharp, it had been cold, dismissive, directed at someone who was following the rules and still made to feel small. Later that afternoon, Franklin approached Shayla while she was restocking a shelf of folded linens. "Does she always talk to clients like that?" Shayla turned slowly, considering the question. "Only certain ones." He didn't ask what that meant. He already knew. "Why hasn't anyone reported it?" "They shouldn't have been like, nay, the boxes are checked," Sierra said. "It's this building. Everything sticks." HR reps rotate so often. Everything gets lost in the shuffle. Has she ever said anything directly to you?" "I've heard things," Shayla said. "Nothing outright. But you feel it, like when she checks my clock-ins twice but never questions others, or when I get skipped for hours and new hires get handed them instead." Franklin looked at the neatly stacked linens. Shayla didn't just show up to work. She showed up with her head high despite everything. "I don't need her approval," she said, simply. "I do my job, I leave. But when clients get talked to like that, that's what gets to me." The next morning, Franklin waited by the side entrance before his shift. He needed to speak to someone before the day unraveled. At precisely 8:15, Dr. Patel pulled into the lot. Franklin flagged him down. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Dr. Patel adjusted his shoulder bag. "Of course. Have you noticed how Carla interacts with certain clients?" Dr. Patel paused. "You mean the ones who look like they don't belong in this zip code?" Franklin nodded. "I said something once," Patel admitted. "A few months ago. She told me to stick to clinical work." "She's becoming a liability," Franklin said. "I know, but I'm not in charge." Franklin nodded. "You'll want to be in the break room around noon." At 11:50, Carla called a staff meeting. She stood near the back wall, arms crossed, tablet gripped tightly in one hand. "A couple updates," she said. "We're getting a temp from Central Scheduling to assist at the desk. Shayla, you'll go back to floater duty starting tomorrow." Shayla didn't react. "I'm also changing how we rotate desk coverage. Too many hands in the pot lately. Things are slipping." Franklin stepped forward. "Actually," he said, voice calm and measured, "I'd like to speak." Carla blinked. "This isn't a Q&A?" "It's not a question." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small envelope, worn at the edges from being held all morning. He handed it to her. She opened it slowly, eyes narrowing. Inside was a folded memo, on corporate letterhead she didn't recognize. Everything was about to change. She read the first few lines of the letter, then stopped, her eyes locking on the signature. Franklin pulled off his glasses. The room went still as sharp brown eyes met Carla's. His voice was calm but unmistakably resolute. "My name is Franklin James," he said. "I own this company." Silence swept the room like a cold wind. Shayla's jaw clenched. She didn't say a word, but her eyes didn't leave Carla. Carla's face drained of color. She stammered. "You've been warned before," Franklin interrupted. "About your tone, about your judgment, about treating people as disposable." She opened her mouth again, but he raised a hand, quiet but final. "Don't speak. I've sat in your lobby and been ignored. I've watched you undermine the very people keeping this place afloat. I've seen how you treat clients who don't match your idea of premium." "I run a tight location," Carla began. "No," he cut in. "You run a fortress. And you've kept good people locked out behind those walls." He turned to Shayla. "You're not going back to Floater," he said. "You're the new assistant manager of this location, effective immediately." There were gasps, subtle, not theatrical, just real. Then he turned to the rest of the room. "If you've ever been overlooked, ignored, dismissed, I want your names. I want to know who's held this place together while being treated like they were invisible. And I want to know what behaviors we've allowed to become normal. Because that ends today." Carla stepped back, as if physically struck. "I've given years to this company. And in that time," Franklin said coldly, "you made it harder for people to trust us." He nodded once. An HR representative, quietly standing at the back, stepped forward. She faced Carla and said evenly, "Please gather your belongings." There was no protest, no scene. Carla turned, face blank, and walked out of the room. Franklin waited until the door shut before speaking again. "This isn't about punishment," he said. "It's about respect. You can't sell wellness if you treat people like they don't matter." He looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. "I came here undercover because I stopped trusting reports. I stopped trusting filters. I forgot what it feels like to be on the floor in the daily noise and struggle." He paused, turning back to Shayla. "You kept this place alive. Now we're going to rebuild it the right way." The following week brought a quiet but undeniable shift. The front desk, once a source of stress and chaos, now ran smoothly under Shayla's command. She had spent the weekend drafting a new schedule. It wasn't perfect. They still didn't have enough staff, but it was balanced. She distributed shifts evenly, rotated responsibilities, and even added staggered breaks to prevent burnout. Franklin didn't change a thing. He signed it without edits. At 8:00 light sharp Monday morning he returned, not in costume, not as Fred, but as Franklin James. No suit, no fanfare, just a simple Oxford shirt with rolled-up sleeves. He didn't retreat to a back office. Instead, he sat up near the front with a notepad and a cup of coffee, observing without interfering. The first client arrived at 8:15. Shayla greeted her warmly, offered water, and had her seated within minutes. No delays, no confusion. By 9:00, the rhythm of the clinic had become steady. The team moved like a single unit, not scrambling, just working, confident, unafraid. When the lobby quieted, Franklin leaned over to Shayla. "How'd you learn to manage schedules like that?" She smiled faintly. "I used to coordinate volunteers for a mobile clinic. Different faces every day, limited hours, high demand. You learn quickly who shows up." Franklin nodded. "You've got an eye for pressure points. That's rare." Shayla didn't answer with a compliment. Instead, she asked, "Are we getting help from corporate?" "We are," Franklin replied. "I've approved 2 part-time hires. You'll conduct the interviews." She blinked, surprised. "You know what this place needs better than anyone." Across the lobby, Dr. Patel emerged from a treatment room. "I heard the full story from Shayla this morning," he said softly. Franklin looked up. And? You did the right thing. Carla's absence speaks for itself. It's calmer now. We're still running lean, Franklin admitted. If one person calls out, the day tilts. We need infrastructure, Patel said. Temporary relief is coming 2 days a week from nearby locations. Patel nodded. Also, thank you for not disappearing after the reveal. I can't fix this from a distance anymore. Just before noon, a man in his 50s walked in wearing a mechanic's uniform. Shayla looked up. Mr. Alvarez, right? Booked last week. Yeah. I'm early. You're good, she said. Room 3 will be ready in 5. He looked surprised. That fast? We're trying something new. He sat down, looked around the lobby, and said, This place feels different. Used to be cold, like you didn't belong. What made it feel that way? Franklin asked, leaning forward. You'd walk in. No one would say anything for 10 minutes, like they were checking if you had insurance before deciding to be polite. If you ever feel that way again, Franklin said quietly, tell me. Alvarez nodded, then glanced at Shayla. She's why I came back. Treated me like a person. After his appointment, Franklin stopped Shayla near the break room. How long's he been a client? Since last year. Quiet guy, comes every few months. Notices everything. Franklin paused. I want to build a client council. 10 people, mixed backgrounds. We'll meet quarterly, find out what's working and what's not. Shayla raised an eyebrow. That's new. That's the point. Midweek, the new hires began. Anaka and Jordan. Shayla ran their onboarding personally. One treatment room was converted into a rotating desk pod so they could learn without clogging the lobby. Jordan, a former hotel concierge, was quick on the software. Anaka, from a medical office background, asked sharp questions and scribbled notes in a small pad. Franklin stayed out of their way, only stepping in when needed. He wasn't there to micromanage. He was there to ensure no one got lost in the cracks again. On Thursday afternoon, he asked Shayla for a walkthrough. Room by room, they inspected supplies, checked logs, and chatted with staff. At the back near the storage closet, he stopped. This is where I first heard you speak up, he said. You were restocking? I asked about Carla. You didn't hold back. But you didn't complain either. You gave me facts. I figured if I didn't say anything, nothing would change. You ever think about running your own location? She hesitated. That's a big leap. You're already doing the hard part. You lead, you listen, you see what others miss. She folded her arms. Then why didn't anyone notice before? Because we were listening to the wrong people. They returned to the lobby to find Jordan helping an elderly woman with her coat. She smiled and said, Thank you for your patience. I couldn't have imagined this 2 weeks ago, Franklin said. You could have, Shayla replied. You just needed to see it with your own eyes. That evening, Franklin gathered the team in the break room, not for a meeting, but for dinner. He had ordered Caribbean food from a local spot. Everyone ate in shifts, laughing between client waves, and when dessert arrived, Franklin stood. I know the past few weeks haven't been easy, he began. You've worked through chaos, covered gaps, kept this place alive when the structure failed you. He looked around the table. You deserve more than just a thank you. He held up 3 fingers. Everyone in this room is getting a performance bonus, modest but immediate. 2. We're launching quarterly check-ins not just for feedback but for growth. You'll have a say in how we evolve. And 3. We are introducing peer review for leadership, including me. No one is untouchable. Not anymore. There were stunned looks, followed by quiet applause. Not forced, not loud, just real. Then Franklin turned to Shayla. Starting next quarter, Shayla will begin training with regional leadership for a senior management track. She's earned it, on merit, not favor. The room fell quiet again. Finally, Shayla spoke. I didn't do this alone. We all showed up, when it would have been easier to walk out. Franklin lifted his cup of ginger tea. To showing up, and to never ignoring what's right in front of us. They toasted, not as co-workers, but as people who'd shared something bigger than a job. That night, after the last client left, Franklin stayed to help close. He wiped down chairs, turned off lights, restacked magazines. You don't have to do that anymore, Shayla said at the door. I do, he said quietly, because I forgot what it means to care about the details. Outside, the evening air was cool. Only a few cars remained in the lot. Under soft lights, Franklin turned to her. This place, it's better now. Not perfect, she replied. But better? Let's keep it that way. And they walked to their cars, not as boss and employee, not as titles, but as people who now understood what it meant to rebuild from the inside out.